The Short Story Is, a podcast by Dentsu.
Hey, welcome to The Short Story Is. This is a podcast where we're casually talking about all things growth and innovation, and we are really doing a thorough job bringing you the best insights from the world of Dentsu. Today is quite exciting because if we say a word innovation, I think these guys are taking that to really the next level. I am talking to Hiromi and Yusaku from Dentsu Lab Tokyo. Hi guys, pleasure to have you on our podcast today. The only time we met so far is an important one here because I imagine we will meet again someday. We met in Cannes this year.
Yeah.
And you brought Dentsu Lab Tokyo to Cannes to let people experience the entire thing. You brought some projects, you were doing these guided tours. And that was the moment when you absolutely blew my mind because that was the first time ever when I saw projects like clothing for metaverse, Planet Earth getting, satellite data and turning that into music. So Planet Earth really being the musician there and all sorts of innovation and creativity that I've really never seen before. So ever since then, I have been thinking, why do we have that in Dentsu? How come do we have that in Dentsu? And what does that really mean in terms of a business incentive, in terms of uncovering new ways of being creative, and so on and so forth. So tell me, please, what was this thinking behind setting up the Dentsu Lab Tokyo back in 2014? And why would Dentsu need a research lab with such a particular socio-cultural angle?
Hello, everyone. I'm Hiromi, and I work at Dentsu Lab Tokyo, and I am a part of the global team at Dentsu Lab Tokyo working as a global business representative. Exciting to be here. So, Yusaku, if you would like to introduce yourself, and then I would answer.
I'm Yusaku, creative technologist of Dentsu Lab Tokyo. Creative technologist is not only engineers, but also thinking creativity, think creative. That is a little different from a technical engineer. Thank you.
So yeah, I'm so excited about our small reunion, quick reunion here. So Irina, to answer your first question, the short story to your question would be, I would say it was kind of destined to happen for the Dentsu Lab Tokyo to be established. So the founding and early members of Dentsu Lab Tokyo, I'm going to abbreviate it as DLT from here. So wanted to experiment more in the variation of methods in brand communication. So while the traditional methods such as, print or video images are effective in their own way, there are, numerous new technologies out there that we have room to experiment and would enable us to find new ways of message communication. So the members who were were those who actively engaged in experimenting with these new technological tools, foreseeing that it would eventually become their strength for creative production. So when DLT has become an official organization within the Dentsu Japan, we primarily engaged in, I believe, R&D in the genre of entertainment, music, performance design, and so forth, setting our main purpose as combining technology and creativity as a paintbrush to draw never before seen experiences. And today, the scope of work we cover is wide, so such as new reality, inclusive tech, space design, live performances, and so on. And we have creative technologists like Yusaku here specialized in those areas. That's sort of like a plain explanation of DLT. So if Yusaku has anything to add to that.
It's often considered one of R&D organizations. However, it has different characteristics from the other organizations, such as universities and techno companies. And people usually think R&D means improving a particular technology, building knowledge, and delivering value through the technology itself. DLT is different. Our value is creativity and ideas. DLT explores and delivers new expressions and experiences through the effective use of technology. There are large differences in style and output between technology-centric work and creative-centric work. Both have their advantages, but what is excellent about DLT's way is flexibility to collaborate with any client or partner.
I believe that what started as Dentsu Lab Tokyo in 2014 has evolved in a way. So you started, as you mentioned, as an R&D in quite particular fields. What is the main focus of DLT today?
Again, the short story would be, it can be summarized in one of our inner credo, good tech, loves good story. So we place our focus on fusing technology with the brand's core message and then sublimate it into experiences that move people's hearts and emotion. So for example, data. Let's talk about data. Data is essential in modern customer experience and brand communication, I believe. And the combination of data can elucidate the history and the existence of a given subject and create narratives to give birth to surprisingly fresh new experiences. And let me give you some examples because I don't want to get you lost here. So there's a work called Pot Music Player. And Irina, I believe you have seen this work before, but let me just briefly explain for our listeners. So in this work, there's a box or an altar-like shape installation. And on the altar, there's a turntable where you can place an object of your choice. And surrounding the turntable and thus the object are two sensors. And as the object rotates on the turntable, these sensors are going to sense the RGBD data and scans the uneven surface of the object. And then it converts the acquired data into corresponding harmony designed by sound artist Katsuhiro Chiba. So it's like a record player with objects using the ontological or existential data innate to the object as an input. And if you scale it out to the largest object on the Earth, we have another work called Voice of the Earth. And this is doing the similar thing like the pop music player. It's collecting open data from artificial satellites such as humidity, vegetation, CO2, forest fire, and so forth. And as the artificial satellite rotates around the Earth, it plays the function of a sensor scanning the surface of the Earth. And the scanned environmental data is going to be converted into, again, corresponding harmony and sound for each layer, like an orchestra. So it's musical instrument being the Earth. And by the way, Voice of the Earth is still a prototype work and it functions like an initial sketch for the concept confirmation. But in conclusion, from data, we're seeing a fresh way of appreciating the object. And there are many ways to aesthetically play around with the data. So if you're interested, feel free to reach out and we can discuss, I guess.
I have a question because that's how you got me back in Cannes. When I saw Planet Earth making music, I just realized, okay, this is the place to be. But what is the set of skills you need in the team? Because I would understand that for tech-related issues, you are hiring, I don't know, let's say engineers, speaking broadly. But for the ideation process, who sits within the team saying, okay, and tomorrow we're going to start working on Earth, making sounds and transferring the satellite data into music? Because we need to appreciate that more.
Yeah, sure. So that's another particularity about the Dentsu Lab Tokyo, because we have the large portion of us is what we call the creative technologist, who has his or her own specialty ranging from craft, material work to digital craft, such as AR, VR, visual coding, and so forth. So we have those flock of people. And also we have art directors and also producers who will be able to, take the lead in the initiation of the ideation process. So we can sort of offer a one-stop solution for those R&D works and client commission work as well. We are very diverse people.
You sent me a deck that helped me understand what is Dentsu Lab Tokyo, your best use cases, the philosophy behind the Dentsu Lab Tokyo. And there was one particular slide that said that you have some core principles. And I'll read it out loud. Be irregular, answer from errors, making is thinking, think personal. Could you dwell upon each of these principles a bit, please?
I think some of the principles linked to the be irregular contrast with the regular thinking and contrast the way of thinking that creates stable and predictable output. We do not take such a regular way. At first, error answers for errors. Error refers not to a serious bug, but to a glitch that leads to unpredictability. Glitches do not exist in the right answer, but the irregular and capricious glitches is a source of creativity. We think source of creativity. And we try to get answers from glitches and other uncertainties and unpredictability. It's more fun that way, isn't it? And since we are trying to get answers from such errors, glitches, so only thinking will never give us the desired answers for us. So making is thinking. Making is an essential part of thinking, we think. And from a different viewpoint, it could say that we are trying to augment human creativity and push it to its limits through the process of making and technology. And finally, I mentioned about think personal. Innovation is often born from someone's small awareness rather than a big issue that everyone understands. DLT members are expected to get the seeds of such innovation.
And together with those principles, because I admire and adore when you are working from glitches, learning from mistakes, right? Uncovering indiscrepancies in the process, let's say. How are you looking at the market then? Are you trying to, for example, look at the numbers and say, okay, AI is really booming. So are we now looking into that particular field? So all of our endeavors and all of our creative process will now be AI centered because the market demands us to do so. Or are you trying to be more of drivers of the market? So the market is now excited about AI. However, we see some other things that could potentially be the next, big thing on the tech scene.
That's a great question, and also an important question. I don't know if I can fully answer, but there's been things like hype cycle of technology, for example, and of course, our researchers and technologists are playing around with the latest technology and the so-called the next big thing. We can easily jump onto the trendy thing, but our approach might be slightly different. So while we are aware of the latest technologies, we are also interested in a combination of old and new technology, both of them, to achieve the desired goal and effect that the client wishes. So not necessarily only following the trendiest next big thing, although it's important to know the technological backbone of it, but rather the combination of old and new technology for how to achieve the desired effect might be our approach, if that makes sense.
Could you walk us through some of your favorite projects by Dentsu Lab Tokyo?
Okay, so can I go first? Or? Okay, I'm so excited to talk about our project.
I have my favorites too.
Okay.
And my favorite project is Upcycling Possibilities, one of the collaborative R&D project. Have you ever heard of a traditional Japanese upcycling technique called kintsugi? So by beautifully repairing chipped or broken vessels, using lacquer and gold, the restored vessels are more valuable than new ones. That is kintsugi. And this project, Upcycling Possibilities, not only carries on the spirit and technique of kintsugi, but also add technology that bring new function to the broken object, thus achieving multiple aspects of upcycling. So, and before I heard about this project, Upcycling Possibilities, I had seen many studies and examples of combining technology with common everyday object to create functional upcycling. But however, none of them made me want to use. So while they were able to update functionality, but however, they were not able to update the feelings of ownership and using. So on the other hand, Upcycling Possibilities, that project values the background story of kintsugi, beautiful story of kintsugi, and has realized functional upcycling while keeping the spirit of it. I think this is an excellent project to explain DLT's think of way.
So I definitely want to mention the work of UNLABELED, Camouflage Against the Machines. And this work, you can view the detailed description on our website. So it has won Grand Prix at AdFest and the Yellow Pencil at the NAD Awards. And by the way, have you seen surveillance camera in the city? I believe you
tons of them.
Yeah, that you have as a modern citizen. So UNLABELED is a project where we develop special camouflage patterns that works against labeling by AI in surveillance cameras. And this camouflage pattern is a textile pattern that can be printed on a fabric like t-shirt. So let's say you would stand in front of the surveillance camera and wearing the unlabeled t-shirt with this camouflage pattern. The algorithm of the surveillance camera of AI gets confused and it fails to recognize us as human beings. So it's like those famous invisible cloaks from some movies. We would make, James Bond or Ethan Hunt very proud. But our purpose was to achieve
Harry Potter. Harry Potter.
Oh yeah. Okay. Definitely. and Lord of the Rings. Yeah. Our purpose was to achieve a garment that deceives AI. And it's a statement piece. So intentionally, the camouflage does not work for all surveillance cameras. And the important thing is the why. As a tech-savvy team, we're not only connoisseurs of the technological backbone of new technological inventions, but also deeply we are interested in the moral implications of a new technology. So how it's going to be placed in the society, and what social impact it will bring, like generative AI or large language model, for example. And this work was inspired by one of the DLT's members' very personal experience of being on a cab in Tokyo and facing that strangeness of being labeled by AI. And from there, personal experience went into technological experiments, prototyping, and finally resulting into a commercial collaboration with the street fashion brand Nexus 7. And we released a limited collection with them, and I believe it all sold out. So the reason why I think this work is strong is because it proposes in this technological age where we sort of like inevitably have to live with numerous kinds of technologies. We propose a fresh way, a fresh possibility of reframing fashion as a tool to show there's a freedom of choice in the form of identity statement, freedom of choice on how you want to live with any kind of technology. So the patterns are actually customizable, so brand collaboration is possible for this work. And I believe it's a very important piece for a branding perspective for any brand as well. So that's all I wanted to say for the unlabeled.
That's quite an important idea, I think, when something is growing from a very personal insight. Because in Cannes this year, for example, we got a Grand Prix for scrolling therapy. You surely heard about that when the insight was that one of the team members was diagnosed with Parkinson's, and that's how it all started. So you're talking about probably the same thing, personal experience, then turns into an insight, then turns into a project, then turns into a bigger question about AI, morality, or how tech works in the modern world. And then we reach out to brands, and then something magical happens. So could you walk us through the anatomy of research? Like, where do you really start? One way is just to get an idea arising from a personal experience. But are there any other ways where you normally start and in the end we get things like a garment like unlabeled, or data visualization like pod music player, or a tableware equipped with heat technology? Because that doesn't normally what people are thinking of on a daily basis, right?
Okay, at first, in general, daily survey and sharing knowledge are important, very important, even before the project starts. Before project starts, we can jump into projects because DLT members are constantly helping each other and gaining extensive knowledge. And of course, projects start out differently. Some may ask us to create something unique on a particular technology, while others may come from our members' own awareness of issues that we're facing. Except for projects that are time sensitive, most projects will be agile project. And we research, discuss, try out concept, prototyping, fail, learn, and discuss again. Agile. This is exactly what I mentioned before, answers from errors and making it thinking. And we also remember to think personal, because we cannot predict a final result at the beginning, of course. So we value the small insights we gain during prototyping and discussions. Then we lift them up to the goal.
So the examples of starting from members' personal experience would be the like unlabeled, just like I mentioned before. And the technology-based approach example would be something like the work like Distance Zero. So again, you can visit our website for more details, where we collaborated with the Japanese telecommunication company NTT and their ultra-low latency network technology, ION, innovative optical and wireless network. So with NTT, we designed a remote cheering experience for sports events, for example, using this technology. And this was during pandemic where people couldn't physically gather for cheering. So we wanted to create experience which transform physical constraints into positive experience. So that would be some of the examples that we can give.
You're working with quite a wide array of clients. So it's not just businesses in a broad sense of the word. It's also universities, cultural institutions, artists, which is really amazing. And again, my question is, what's the business incentive in every of those cases, in each of those cases, and success metrics behind working with a specific clients and partners?
So that is a very, very difficult question. Of course, like any other organization, we want to earn revenue. in some cases, it is from implementation of promotions, and other cases from our technology consulting services. But in terms of evaluation, it is also noteworthy when the project makes an impact on society or contributes to the happiness of people facing challenges. But however, there are no clear metrics common to DLT, but each project is evaluated from multiple perspectives.
But that's one of my favorite questions, because I just keep, talking to people and asking why we're doing this and where's the business incentive. It's kind of my thing. Any final messages? Because my final message to you guys would be, can you please write a book about this? Because that's just sounds so good and so important for the industry. I think that would be quite an interesting read.
Thank you. It's such an honor. High accolade. Thanks. So our desire would be to work together with as many people or as many institutions as possible. So let's work together and give birth to fresh and surprising experiences around the world. So speaking of myself, my previous work has been in the IT and DX industry. So looking at DLT from inside with such experience, I would say we're quite an amplified group of people that can produce experiences that make our hearts race. And it feels to me that the true evolution in creating experiences using technology and embracing modern creativity, so to say, would have something to do with, updating the very meaning of existence in life and what we can experience in it. So as much as we value practicality and efficiency, I would say that it would be so essential to create excitement and joy, which makes our heart tremble, and very humane emotions that cannot be replaced. So, in order to achieve this, I believe that it is quite important for every single member of us to pay attention to small details in everyday life, finding clues and what triggers such emotions, and frequently updating ourselves on technological trends and knowledge with acute sensitivity. And we're very confident in this. The speed, quantity, and the quality of ideas we can generate in response to a request. So we're always looking for new technology, new ideas, and new desire to entertain the world. And we're also distributing reports like technology reports and open to brainstorming sessions. So please feel free to reach out, and excited to meet you in near future. Thanks.
Okay. My message is very, very simple. If you share our attitude, let's collaborate with us, whether you are inside or outside of Dentsu. We can work with any people, whether you are not good at the technology or you are a technology specialist. We can collaborate with you. Thank you.
That is really lovely. Thank you, Hiromi. Thank you, Yusaku. And this has been the short story of Dentsu Lab Tokyo.